My daughter kicked me out of the wedding. Get out of here and don't come back. You're ruining the atmosphere of the celebration, she shouted in front of all the guests. I just smiled, took out the envelope, and calmly tore it in half. Okay, then you won't need this. When they saw the pieces, they started screaming in panic. The next day, I had 47 missed calls. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and write in the comments what time it is where you are now. I parked my 15-year-old Camry in the lot behind the Allen house and sat there for a minute, engine ticking as it cooled. Through the windshield, I could see couples in evening wear gliding toward the entrance, the men in tailored suits that probably cost more than my monthly mortgage. I adjusted my tie, the navy one I'd worn to Carol's funeral 8 years ago, and picked up the envelope from the passenger seat. The weight of it felt significant in my hand. $3 million, converted to a cashier's check 2 days earlier. Everything I'd saved across 4 decades of running Clark Construction. I'd planned to split it between Della and her sister eventually, but Maya had her own family, her own stability. Della needed it more, or so I'd thought. I walked through the carved double doors into a world that smelled like money, orchids, champagne, something expensive being seared in a kitchen somewhere. Crystal chandeliers threw light across ice sculptures shaped like swans. I counted at least 150 guests, maybe more. The envelope crinkled slightly as I tightened my grip. Della stood near the entrance in her white gown, Leroy beside her in a charcoal suit that fit him like it had been painted on. I approached, working up something close to a smile. Della, Leroy, congratulations. I brought you something. My daughter's eyes flicked toward me, then away like she'd spotted a stain on the marble floor. Just put it somewhere, Dad. Leroy didn't even turn. He was already scanning the room for someone more important. I stood there for another few seconds, then moved toward the reception area, where name cards directed guests to their tables. Mine was in the back corner, table 17, partially hidden by a decorative column. I sat down alone. The centerpiece was taller than my head, white roses and something silver I couldn't name. Dinner service started an hour later. Waiters in white gloves delivered plates I didn't touch. Up at the head table, Della and Leroy held court, their laughter carrying across the ballroom. I watched my daughter smile at strangers, that practiced expression she used when she wanted something. She'd perfected it over the years. Then Leroy stood, microphone in hand, and started making toasts. The first few were standard, thanking guests, praising his bride. But then his tone shifted, got looser, more pointed. You know what I love about tonight? He said, gesturing with his champagne glass. Everyone here gets it. You all understand quality, class, knowing your place in the world. He paused for effect. You ever notice how some guys just don't fit anywhere? Like, read the vibe, man. Laughter rippled through the crowd. I felt it land on me like a spotlight. I mean, some people never learn. They show up where they're not wanted, wearing clothes from, 1990? More laughter. But hey, at least they try, right? I set down my water glass carefully. My hand was steady. That surprised me. Leroy continued for another minute, each joke another knife, and Della sat there beside him, not laughing but not stopping him either. Her smile had gone tight, performative. She knew exactly who he meant. I stood up. The room didn't notice at first. I was too far back, too invisible. I walked between tables, past conversations and clinking silverware, the envelope in my hand. A few people glanced up as I approached the head table, curiosity replacing amusement. Della saw me coming. Her expression shifted from that fake smile to something harder, colder. Leroy stopped mid-sentence. I wanted to give you this personally, I started. Dad, get out of here. Della's voice cut across the ballroom like shattering glass. You're ruining the celebration. Just leave. The room went silent. 150 people stopped eating, drinking, breathing, all eyes on me. I stood there for 3 seconds, maybe 4. I could feel my heartbeat in my throat, but my face stayed blank. I reached inside the envelope, felt the check's smooth edge. All right, Della, I said. My voice came out calm, measured, like I was discussing the weather. Then you won't need this. What? She waved her hand dismissively. Just go already. I tore the envelope vertically. The sound seemed loud in that silent room. Then I rotated the pieces and tore horizontally. 4 pieces now. I let them fall, one by one, watching them flutter to the marble floor like autumn leaves. Then I turned and walked toward the exit. My steps were even, unhurried. Behind me I heard a chair scrape back. Wait, is this... Oh my God, these numbers... A woman's voice, high and shocked. 3 million? The ballroom erupted. Chairs scraped. Voices overlapped in chaos. Dad! Della's scream cut through everything. Wait! Dad! I didn't turn around. I pushed through the double doors into the cool evening air, keys already in my hand. Behind me, footsteps pounded on marble. Della and Leroy burst through the entrance as I reached my car. I got in, started the engine, and pulled out of the parking lot. In my rearview mirror, I saw Della in her white dress, running after me in her heels, one hand reaching out like she could pull me back through sheer force of will. I drove home and didn't look back. The drive home took 20 minutes, but I don't remember any of it. One moment I was pulling out of the Allen House parking lot. The next, I was sitting in my driveway, staring at my darkened house. The engine was still running. I turned it off and sat there in silence. Inside, I didn't turn on any lights. I walked straight to the living room and dropped into Carol's old armchair, the one I'd kept meaning to reupholster but never did. The fabric still smelled faintly like her lavender lotion, even after 8 years. I set my phone face up on the coffee table and waited. It didn't take long. The screen lit up. Della's name. I watched it ring, the glow illuminating my face in the darkness, then fade to black. 2 minutes later, it lit up again. Leroy this time. I let that one die too. By midnight, I'd stopped counting. The phone just kept lighting up, over and over, like a heartbeat. Each time, I stared at the name until the screen went dark. I didn't feel sad. I didn't feel regret. For the first time since Carol died, I felt something sharp and clear cutting through the fog I'd been living in. Cold anger. They'd gotten used to my silence, my weakness, the way I'd bent and accommodated and disappeared whenever it was convenient for them. 8 years of that, since Carol passed, and I'd stopped knowing how to be anything except invisible. Well, they were noticing me now. I made coffee around 3 in the morning, standing in my kitchen watching the pot brew. The phone lit up on the counter. Number 32, maybe 33. I poured a cup and went back to the armchair. Dawn came slowly, gray light creeping across the walls. I picked up the phone for the first time since I'd gotten home. 47 missed calls. The text messages scrolled on forever. I didn't open them, just read the previews. Dad, I'm so sorry. Please, we need to explain. Call us back, please. The check. Can we talk? Dad, please. That check. We didn't know. Call us back. We're family. I set the phone down and went to shower. The hot water felt good against my shoulders. I dressed for work. Khakis, a button-down shirt, work boots. Monday morning. Same as always. Clark Construction wasn't going to run itself. The office was in a converted warehouse on the east side, 20 minutes from my house. I'd built the business from nothing, started as a day laborer at 19, saved enough to buy a truck, hired my first crew at 25. 40 years later, we had contracts all over the state. 52 employees, a reputation for getting things done right. My secretary Brenda looked up when I walked in. Morning, Mr. Clark. Coffee's fresh. Thanks, Brenda. I paused by her desk. If Della or Leroy Morgan arrive today, I'm unavailable. Indefinitely. Her eyebrows went up slightly, but she just nodded. Understood. I went into my office and stood by the window, one hand on the blinds. The parking lot was empty except for Brenda's Civic and my Camry. I had 3 project bids to review and a site inspection at noon, but I couldn't focus on any of it. They came on Tuesday, day 2 after the wedding. I was at my desk when Brenda's voice came through the intercom. Mr. Clark, your daughter is here. She says it's urgent. Tell her I'm not available. Through the blinds, I watched them enter the lobby. Della had changed from her wedding dress into jeans and a blazer, but she still moved like she was on stage. Leroy followed her, checking his phone every 30 seconds. Brenda delivered my message. I couldn't hear what Della said in response, but her body language was clear. Hands gesturing, voice rising. Leroy touched her arm, trying to calm her. She shook him off. They sat down in the lobby chairs and waited. I went back to my desk and worked, or pretended to. Mostly I watched the clock and listened to their voices drift through the walls, muffled, frustrated, occasionally sharp with argument. At one point, Leroy stood up and walked to Brenda's desk. "We've been here 3 hours. Where the hell did he go?" "I'm sorry. Mr. Clark must have left. I didn't see him." Which was true. While they'd been arguing in the lobby, I'd slipped on my jacket, walked down the back hallway to the storage room, and exited through the rear door. My car was parked on the side street, specifically so I could avoid the main lot. I drove to a diner on the outskirts of town and had lunch. Took my time with it. Eggs, toast, coffee refills. When I returned to the office 2 hours later, Brenda informed me they'd finally left around 4. The letter arrived Wednesday. I found it in my mailbox when I got home that evening. A cream-colored envelope with Della's handwriting on the front. I recognized the stationery. Carol had given her a set for her college graduation. I opened it standing in my kitchen, still wearing my work boots. "Dear Dad, I need you to understand how overwhelmed I was with wedding stress. Planning that day took months, and the pressure was enormous. Leroy thought it was best if the celebration stayed focused on us, and I was too exhausted to think clearly. I never meant to hurt you. You're my father, and I love you. Please understand that what happened wasn't about you. It was about me not being in the right headspace. Can we please talk? I want to explain everything properly. We both do. Love, Della." I read it twice, then set it on the kitchen counter. Something inside my chest loosened. Not in a good way, but like a knot unraveling into something sharper. Leroy thought, "Of course." I read the letter a third time, and that's when it happened. I smiled. Actually smiled, felt my mouth curve upward for the first time in years. But it wasn't a warm smile. It wasn't the kind of smile you'd want to see on someone's face. She wasn't sorry about what she'd done. She was sorry about what it cost her. They both were. I pulled out my phone and searched for a name I'd seen on a billboard downtown. Stephen Wright, attorney at law, specialized in estate planning and family law. I dialed the number and got an answering service. It was after hours. "I'd like to schedule a consultation," I said when the woman asked how she could help. "It's about my will." Stephen Wright's office occupied the 12th floor of a glass tower downtown, the kind of building where the elevator required a key card and the reception area had art that probably cost more than my truck. I arrived 15 minutes early for my Thursday morning appointment, carrying a briefcase I hadn't touched since Carol's funeral arrangements. The attorney was younger than I expected, early 50s maybe, with silver at his temples and reading glasses on a chain. He shook my hand firmly and gestured to the chair across from his mahogany desk. "Mr. Clark, you mentioned estate planning on the phone, but I sense there's more to discuss." I opened the briefcase and started pulling out documents. Property deed, utility bills, bank statements. I spread them across his desk like evidence at a trial. "My daughter lives in a house I own, has for 7 years. She and her husband pay nothing. No rent, no utilities, no maintenance. Everything's in my name." I slid the property deed toward him. Only my name. Wright picked it up, examined it, then reached for the utility bills. His eyes moved quickly, professionally. He didn't ask why I was there. Lawyers like him didn't need to. "Walk me through the living arrangement," he said. "Was there ever a written lease agreement?" "No. Never discussed it formally. She moved in after college. Said it was temporary. Then her boyfriend moved in. Then they got married. 7 years later, they're still there. Do they pay anything? Contribute to household expenses?" "Nothing." Wright set down the documents and looked at me directly. "Mr. Clark, since there's no written lease and they've never paid rent, they're classified as guests at will. Texas law is clear. You can terminate their residency with 30 days written notice." Something in my chest loosened. "How quickly can we start the process?" "I can draft the notice today. You'll need it notarized and sent via certified mail." He pulled a legal pad toward him and started writing. "Once they receive it, they have 30 days to vacate. If they refuse, you file for eviction with the justice of the peace court. But that's rarely necessary. Most people leave when they understand the legal reality." I watched him write for a moment. "What if they contest it?" "They can try. But without a lease agreement, without having paid rent, without their names on any ownership documents," he looked up, "they have no legal standing. This is your property, Mr. Clark. You have absolute right to decide who lives there. The consultation lasted 90 minutes. By the time I left, I had a folder full of documents and a clear understanding of exactly how much power I held. 2 days later, on Saturday morning, I sat at my kitchen table and reviewed everything. The property deed bought the house in 2011, paid cash from a construction contract that had gone better than expected. Carol had picked it out, loved the view of the hills. After she died, I couldn't stand being there alone, so I'd moved to this smaller place and let Della use it. A temporary arrangement that had become permanent. Except it wasn't permanent. Not legally. I found the utility bills, the property tax statements, the homeowner's insurance documents. Every single page had one name, Robert James Clark. On Monday, 5 days after my attorney meeting, I got in my truck and drove to Westlake Hills. The route was familiar. I'd driven it hundreds of times over the years, bringing groceries when Della first moved in, helping with repairs, dropping off money when she mentioned things were tight. 23 minutes from my driveway to hers. I parked behind her SUV and sat there for a moment, looking at the house. The paint job I'd paid for 3 years ago still looked good. The landscaping she'd wanted. Stone pathway, native plants that I'd installed myself one weekend. My house, my money, my work. I got out and walked to the front door. Used my key, didn't knock, didn't ring the bell. Just unlocked it and walked in. Della appeared from the kitchen, eyes wide with surprise that shifted rapidly into something like hope. "Dad, you came. Does this mean—" I walked past her toward the living room, pulling out my phone. Started taking pictures. The hardwood floors I'd refinished. The fireplace. The windows. "Dad, what are you doing? Why are you taking pictures? Talk to us." I moved through the dining room, the kitchen, photographed the counters, the appliances, the light fixtures. Leroy came down the stairs, phone in his hand, like he'd been in the middle of texting. "Look, we've been trying to reach you. Can we talk about what happened?" I walked past him up the stairs, photographed the hallway, the bathroom, the master bedroom, where their clothes were scattered across the bed Carol and I had picked out together, every room documented. Leroy followed me. "Robert, man, this is getting ridiculous. We messed up at the wedding, okay? We get it. But you can't just—" "I'm documenting the current condition," I said, not looking at him. "Current condition of what? This is our home." I descended the stairs, both of them trailing behind me like confused children. At the front door, I turned back. Della's face was pale, her hands clasped together. "Dad, what are you doing? Why are you taking pictures? Talk to us." "I'm the owner," I said, "just checking my property." I walked out and drove home. The silence in the truck felt heavy, but clean. 2 days later, I met with Margaret Wilson, a notary whose office was in a shopping center near my house. She was probably 60, with reading glasses and an efficient manner that reminded me of Carol's sister. She read through the notice to vacate document Wright had prepared, her lips moving slightly with the words, "This gives them until April 30th to vacate. That's the minimum 30 days required by law." She looked up at me. "You understand they may contest this? Let them try." She stamped the document, signed it, had me sign it, filled out the certified mail form with Della's address, my address, technically, sealed everything in the official envelope. "This will be delivered within 2 business days," she said, handing me the receipt. "Keep this. It's proof of delivery." I took it and slipped it into my wallet. Margaret watched me with an expression I couldn't quite read. "Family matter?" she asked quietly. "It is now." I left her office and sat in my truck for a long time, looking at the sealed envelope in my hands. Inside was 30 days' notice that would change everything. I drove to the post office and watched the clerk scan it, watched it disappear into the system. Done. April 1st arrived cold and gray, the kind of morning that felt like the weather knew something was coming. I was at my office reviewing blueprints when my phone buzzed with a calendar reminder. Certified mail delivery. Estimated today. I silenced it and went back to work. Around 11, my phone lit up. Della's name. I let it ring through to voicemail. 30 seconds later, it lit up again. Same name. Decline. Then Leroy. Decline. Then Della again. I turned the phone face down and focused on the structural drawings in front of me. 3 minutes later, my office phone rang, Brenda's extension. Mr. Clark, your daughter is calling on the main line. She sounds upset. I'm unavailable. The calls continued through lunch. By 2 o'clock, I had 14 missed calls. I was starting to think they'd given up when Brenda knocked on my door. Your daughter and her husband are downstairs. They're demanding to see you. I stood and walked to the window, looked down at the parking lot. I couldn't see the lobby entrance from this angle, but I could picture them. Della probably crying, Leroy angry. I picked up my office phone and dialed extension 3. Mike, the building security guard, answered on the second ring. Mike, it's Robert Clark. I have 2 people in the lobby, Della Morgan and Leroy Morgan. They are not permitted entry under any circumstances. If they refuse to leave, call the police for trespassing. Understood, Mr. Clark. I hung up and returned to my desk. 10 minutes later, Brenda appeared again. They left? Security had to escort them out. Mr. Clark, is everything all right? Everything's fine. Thank you, Brenda. She hesitated in the doorway, like she wanted to say more, then nodded and left. 2 days later, on a gray Wednesday morning, I was reviewing payroll when my phone rang. Number I didn't recognize. I almost declined it, then decided to answer. Robert Clark. Mr. Clark, this is Marcus Chen. I'm an attorney representing Leroy Morgan regarding a property matter. I leaned back in my chair. So they'd hired a lawyer. I'm listening. My client received a notice to vacate for a property located at... He rattled off the Westlake address. I'd like to discuss the situation and see if we can reach an agreement that works for everyone. There's nothing to discuss. The notice is legal and properly served. Mr. Clark, with respect, this is a family matter. Surely we can find a compromise. Mr. Chen, if you've reviewed the property deed, you know your clients have no legal standing. If you're charging them money to tell them otherwise, that's between you and your conscience. The move-out date is April 30th. I hung up. That same afternoon, my business partner Tom Henderson called. We'd built Clark Construction together 15 years ago. He handled the commercial contracts while I managed residential. Good man. Honest. Robert, I saw something on Facebook that's got me concerned. Della posted about you. Says you're throwing her out on the street with no warning. That true? I set down my coffee. Let me tell you what happened at her wedding, Tom. Then you can decide who's cruel. I told him everything. The envelope, the public humiliation, Leroy's jokes, the way Della screamed at me in front of 150 people. When I finished, Tom was quiet for a long moment. $3 million. $3 million. And she tore you apart in front of everyone. She did. Another pause. Robert, I don't blame you one bit. Not one bit. You need anything, character reference, whatever, you call me. Appreciated, Tom. After we hung up, I opened my laptop and found Della's Facebook post. The profile picture showed her and Leroy on their wedding day, both smiling like they'd won something. The post was long, emotional, full of phrases like cruel father and thrown onto the street, and after everything we've been through. 340 shares, 127 comments, most of them sympathetic. I closed the laptop without responding. 5 days later, I was walking through a construction site when Tom called again. Got a question for you. Mike Peters saw Della's post too. Wants to hear your side before he makes up his mind. You okay with me giving him your number? Go ahead. Mike called that evening. I told the story again. By the end of it, he was apologizing for even questioning me. The calls kept coming over the next few days. People from my church, no, scratch that. People from the community center where I sometimes volunteered. Business associates. A couple of Della's old friends who wanted the truth. Every time, I told them what happened. Every time, they took my side. Della's social media campaign was backfiring. On a Tuesday morning, 12 days after they'd received the notice, I arrived at my office before dawn. The parking garage was dark, empty except for a few early arrivals on the lower levels. I parked on the third level like always and grabbed my briefcase from the passenger seat. When I rounded the front of my truck, Leroy was there, leaning against my driver's door, coffee cup in hand, like he'd been waiting. He probably had been. Robert, his voice was careful, measured. Man to man, we got off on the wrong foot. I know things went sideways at the wedding. That was on me. But what if we made this right? Paid rent? $500 a month? We'll make it official, sign papers, whatever you want. I looked at him. He'd lost weight since the wedding. His shirt looked slept in. You had a chance to behave like human beings, I said. April 30th. Wait, just listen. I opened the truck door, forcing him to step back. Move! He moved. I climbed in, started the engine, and backed out of the space. In my rearview mirror, I saw him standing there in the fluorescent light, coffee cup still in his hand, watching me drive away. 18 days left. 4 days after the parking garage confrontation, Della called me from an unknown number. I answered without thinking, then heard her voice and nearly hung up. We found a place, she said. No greeting, no preamble. Cedar Park. We're signing the lease today. Good, I said, and ended the call. Cedar Park. That told me everything I needed to know. Not Westlake Hills, not even South Austin. Cedar Park was where people went when they couldn't afford anywhere else. I imagined them sitting in some property management office, filling out applications, watching their options narrow with each credit check. The apartment would be smaller, cheaper, further from everything that mattered to them. The next 6 days passed in a strange, suspended quiet. I went to work, reviewed contracts, managed crews. Normal life, except for the calendar on my desk where I'd marked April 30th in red ink. Every morning I looked at it. Every evening I went home and didn't think about what was happening 20 minutes away in that house. But I knew. They were packing, taking apart 7 years of their life in a place they'd never legally owned. On a Tuesday afternoon, 10 days after they'd found the apartment, Brenda knocked on my office door. Mr. Clark, there's a woman on the phone. Says she's your neighbor at the Westlake property. A Mrs. Patterson. I picked up. This is Robert Clark. Mr. Clark, I'm Eleanor Patterson. I live next door to your property on Hillside Drive. Her voice was careful, polite. I wanted to let you know there's a moving truck in the driveway. Thought you'd want to be aware. Thank you, Mrs. Patterson. That's expected. A pause. I see. Well, your daughter seems quite upset. I just wanted to make sure everything was appropriate. Everything is appropriate. Thank you for calling. I hung up and sat back in my chair. They were leaving early, 2 days before the deadline. Smart move, avoid any appearance of defiance, any excuse for me to take further action. I didn't go to watch, didn't drive by to see the U-Haul or witness Della crying or observe Leroy carrying boxes. Let them have that privacy. I'd take mine when they were gone. The next afternoon, April 29th, 1 day before the deadline, I met Margaret Wilson and Frank Adams at the house. Frank was a property appraiser I'd worked with on construction projects, good at his job, thorough. Margaret brought her notary stamp and a clipboard. We arrived separately. I got there first, parked in the driveway behind Della's car. She was still there, finalizing things. When I walked to the door, it opened before I could knock. Della stood there in jeans and a t-shirt, hair pulled back, eyes red. Behind her, the house was empty. Echoing. Dad, her voice cracked on the word. They're here to inspect? To document, I said. This is Margaret Wilson, notary. Frank Adams, appraiser. We walked through together, room by room. Frank photographed everything, comparing against the images on his tablet, the ones I'd taken 4 weeks ago. Living room, hardwood floors unmarked, walls clean, kitchen appliances intact, counters undamaged. Dining room, light fixture hanging straight, windows unscratched. Upstairs, the master bedroom where Carol and I used to sleep, where Della and Leroy had spent the last 7 years. Empty now except for carpet indentations where the bed had been. Compare these to the photos from March 28th, I said. Frank checked his tablet, moving between the screen and the walls, the closet, the bathroom. Identical condition, Mr. Clark. No damage, no alterations. They left it clean. In the bathroom, I noticed the marble countertop was spotless, pristine, like it had never been used. I thought about Leroy standing here with his options, his anger. Thought about him deciding not to take the risk. Smart. Spite wasn't worth the lawsuit. We finished downstairs. Margaret had been taking notes the entire time, documenting everything with that professional precision notaries have. In the kitchen, Della stood waiting, 2 sets of keys on the counter. Ms. Morgan, Margaret said formally, do you surrender all keys and access to the property willingly? Della's hand hovered over the keys. 3 seconds. 4. Then she pushed them across the counter toward me. Yes. Her voice barely made it past a whisper. Note the time and date for the record, Margaret, I said. April 29th, 2025, 3:47 p.m. Margaret wrote it down, then looked at Della. You have no further legal access to this property as of this moment. Do you understand? I understand. Margaret turned to me. Mr. Clark, as owner, do you accept the return of the property? I do. She made another note. Frank took a final photograph. The keys on the counter, my hand reaching for them. Documentation, evidence, protection against any future claim that I'd acted improperly. Della walked to the door, stopped, turned back. Dad, goodbye, Della. She left. I watched through the window as she got in her car, sat there for a moment with her hands on the steering wheel, then drove away. Margaret and Frank left shortly after. I stood alone in the entryway, listening to the silence. The house felt different, empty, bigger, colder. I walked through it one more time, my footsteps echoing on the hardwood. 7 years of Della's life had happened here. Birthday dinners at that dining table, Christmas mornings in the living room, arguments in the kitchen, normal life in a house she'd thought of as hers. But it was never hers, not legally, not really. I locked up and drove home. That evening my phone rang. Della's number. I looked at the screen for a long moment, her name glowing in the darkness of my living room, then silenced it and set the phone face down on the coffee table. For the first time in a month, I felt something close to peace. Not happiness, not triumph, just the cold satisfaction of knowing that justice, however painful, had been served exactly as it should be. The phone buzzed again, another call. I left it there and went to bed. The text message came the next morning while I was making coffee. Dad, we moved out. I understand you were hurt. Can we meet and talk? Please. You're still my father. I read it 3 times, set the phone on the counter, poured my coffee, read it again. The old Robert, the one who existed before the wedding, would have responded immediately, would have called her, driven to Cedar Park, helped them unpack boxes, would have forgiven everything because that's what fathers do. But I wasn't that Robert anymore. I went to work, came home, made dinner, went to bed. The message sat unanswered in my phone like a test I wasn't ready to take. On the 3rd day, I finally typed a response, deleted it, typed another, deleted that too. Finally settled on 2 words, maybe later. Her reply came within minutes. Thank you for responding. That means everything. I didn't respond to that one. 2 days passed. Then my phone rang, her number, not Leroy's. I stared at it for 3 rings before answering. Dad? You answered. Thank you. Her voice rushed out like she'd been holding her breath. Can we please talk? Just dinner. Somewhere public. I want to explain everything. Ironworks, I said. May 18th. 6 o'clock? Yes, thank you. We'll... Just you. Silence. Then, Leroy wants to apologize too. I almost said no. Almost told her I didn't want to see him. Didn't want to hear anything he had to say. But curiosity won out. I wanted to see them try. Wanted to watch them perform their reconciliation. Both of you then. 6 o'clock. Thank you, Dad. Thank you so much. We'll be there. The days between that call and May 18th moved slowly. I worked. I ate meals alone. I drove past the Westlake house once, just to see it empty, then didn't go back. I didn't know what was happening in Cedar Park, didn't know that Leroy was sitting at their kitchen table with his laptop open, searching Texas inheritance laws no will, and taking notes. Didn't know he was highlighting passages about intestate succession, underlining phrases like children inherit everything and automatic inheritance rights. Didn't know he was showing Della those notes, explaining the math to her. You're his only kid, he said. Eventually all of it. The construction company, the houses, the savings, it's yours. We can't stay enemies forever. That's your inheritance we're talking about. I didn't know any of that, but I would have guessed it if I'd thought about it long enough. May 18th arrived warm and clear. I left work at 5:30 and drove to Ironworks, parking in the lot at 5:55. Walked in at exactly 6 o'clock. They were already there. Corner booth, 2 iced teas already on the table. Della checking her phone nervously while Leroy watched the door. When they saw me, both faces rearranged themselves into careful, hopeful expressions. I slid into the booth across from them. Thanks for coming, Della said immediately. We didn't think you would. I mean, we hoped, but... You're here, Leroy interrupted. No, that's what matters. That's a start. The waiter appeared. I ordered brisket and iced tea. They ordered. Awkward silence while we waited for the food. When it came, Della started talking. Nervous, rapid, filling every silence with words about their new apartment, how it was smaller but nice, different neighborhood, longer commute, managing fine, work was busy, adjusting to changes. I ate my brisket, listened, said almost nothing. And we wanted to say, Della continued, her voice getting higher, tighter, about the wedding, about everything. We were wrong, completely wrong. The way we treated you was inexcusable. We got caught up, Leroy added. Wedding stress, family pressure, stupid decisions. But we've learned from it. We want to make things right. I took a drink of my tea, set the glass down carefully. Have you? Yes, Della leaned forward. Dad, you're my father. You raised me. One mistake shouldn't destroy everything. Family is supposed to forgive. The word hung there. Forgive. Like absolution was something they could request, and I was obligated to provide. We're working on ourselves, Leroy said, going to counseling, trying to be better people, and we want you in our lives. Again. I looked at him, really looked at him for the first time since the wedding. He'd lost more weight. His shirt was cheaper than the suits he used to wear. Cedar Park was teaching him things about consequences. That's good, I said finally. Self-improvement is important. Della's face brightened. So we can start over? Move forward? We'll see. The meal continued. More nervous chattering from Della, strategic comments from Leroy about family and forgiveness and second chances. I ate slowly, watching them perform. When the waiter brought the check, he set it in the middle of the table. Old habit, assuming I'd pick it up. I'd always picked it up before. Every dinner, every lunch, every coffee meeting for 35 years. I pulled out my wallet, counted exact bills, a 20 and a 5, and placed them on my side of the table. I'll pay for myself, I said, standing up. You pay for yourselves. Della's smile froze. Dad, no, you always... Let me... You're independent now. You can handle your own expenses. Leroy started to stand. Robert, come on, we're trying to... But I was already walking toward the exit, leaving them sitting there with open mouths and unpaid bills, and the slowly dawning realization that nothing had changed. In my truck, I sat for a moment before starting the engine. Through the restaurant window, I could see them, Della's head in her hands, Leroy gesturing angrily, both of them arguing about what just happened. They thought we were rebuilding, thought the hard part was over, thought I'd forgiven them because I'd shown up to dinner. They didn't understand that showing up wasn't forgiveness. It was reconnaissance. I started the engine and drove home, already thinking about my next appointment with Stephen Wright. 4 days after the restaurant meeting, I sat across from Stephen Wright again. Same office, same mahogany desk. But this time the folder I brought contained financial statements instead of property deeds. My will, I said, setting the folder down. I need to create one. Wright folded his hands. You don't have one currently? Never got around to it. After my wife died, I kept meaning to, but I trailed off. Didn't need to explain 8 years of grief and avoidance. Mr. Clark, without a formal will, your daughter inherits your entire estate automatically under Texas intestate succession law. He watched my face carefully. Is that your intention? I thought about the restaurant, Della's nervous chattering, Leroy's calculated politeness, the way they'd looked at each other when I walked away, like I'd ruined their carefully rehearsed performance. No, I said, it's not. Wright pulled a legal pad toward him. Walk me through what you want. I spent the next hour explaining. The construction company worth approximately $4.2 million if I sold it. The Westlake house, $1.75 maybe. Investment accounts, savings, everything Carol and I had built, over 40 years of work. Total estate around $8 million. I want 70% to go to a charitable foundation, I said. Affordable housing construction, specifically for elderly people in Texas. Wright wrote. 20%? Scholarship fund, my wife's name. Carol Ann Clark, Memorial Scholarship, local college, for students studying education. And the remaining 10%? Della gets that. But conditional. Only if she's debt-free when I die. If she has outstanding debts, That portion goes to charity, too. Wright looked up. This is legally sound, but understand, she'll contest this. Let her try. It's my money to distribute. I left his office and drove home. Spent 3 days thinking about it. Sat in my downtown apartment with spreadsheets and bank statements, calculating percentages, imagining the housing projects my money could build. Single-story units with wheelchair access, community spaces, gardens, the things Carol used to talk about when we'd drive past homeless encampments. Someone should do something, she'd say. Now someone would. Me. On the 4th day, I called Wright. Draft it. The will signing happened in his office on a Friday afternoon. Margaret Wilson came with her notary stamp. Wright's paralegal, a young woman named Sandra, served as the second witness. They laid out the documents across the conference table, page after page of legal language, that boiled down to one simple truth. Della would get almost nothing. I signed each page. Margaret stamped them. Sandra and Wright witnessed. Done. Keep this in a safe place, Wright said, handing me a sealed envelope. And Mr. Clark, you're doing the right thing. Your assets, your choice. I nodded and left. A week later, I listed the Westlake house. The realtor, a woman named Patricia, who'd sold us the place back in 2011, walked through with her camera and measuring tape. You sure about this, Robert? It's a beautiful property. Too big for one person. Time to let it go. She listed it for $1.85. I told her to accept any reasonable offer. 3 days later, a retired couple from California offered $1.75. Cash sale. Quick close. I accepted immediately. The for sale sign went up on a Tuesday. By Wednesday afternoon, my phone rang. Della. Is it true? Her voice was high, panicked. Jennifer drove by and said the house is for sale. Tell me she's wrong. It's listed. Got an offer yesterday. I accepted it. You're selling the house? The family house? Where Mom lived? It's too big for one person. I'm downsing. But that's our house. It was never your house, Della. It was mine. Silence. Then, where will you live? What about all the memories? I bought a place downtown. 2 bedrooms, good view. Everything I need. You're erasing us. Her voice cracked. You're erasing the whole family. No, I'm building a new life. There's a difference. I hung up before she could respond. The condo I'd bought was in a newer building on West 6th Street. 10th floor, floor-to-ceiling windows, view of the downtown skyline. Modern kitchen I'd never use. Guest room I'd never need. But it was mine, paid in cash, and it had no memories of Della or Leroy or 7 years of being taken advantage of. The week after the house sale, I was leaving my office around 6 when I spotted Leroy near the entrance. He was trying to look casual, leaning against the building's exterior wall, checking his phone, but I recognized the setup immediately. I turned around and walked back through the lobby. Brenda looked up from her desk, confused. Everything okay, Mr. Clark? Fine. Just forgot something. I took the back exit, the one I'd used when Della and Leroy had ambushed my lobby months ago. Walked around the block to where my truck was parked. As I drove past the front entrance, I saw Leroy still waiting there, staring at his phone. In my rearview mirror, I watched him finally look up, scan the emptying parking lot, then punch the wall in frustration. My phone buzzed. Text from Leroy. We're your family. I deleted it without responding. That evening, sitting in my new condo with a view of the city lights, I opened my laptop and reviewed the charitable foundation paperwork Wright had prepared. The Carol Ann Clark Foundation for Senior Housing. It had a good sound to it. Carol would have liked it. My phone buzzed again. Della this time. Dad, please. We need to talk. This isn't fair. Fair. That word again. Like fairness was something they deserved after what they'd done. I turned off my phone and poured myself a drink, sat by the window and watched the city breathe below me. Cars moving, people living their lives, the world continuing whether Della and Leroy understood their consequences or not. The future I was building didn't include them, and for the first time in 8 years, that felt exactly right. 5 days after I'd walked away from Leroy outside my office, I got a call from Tom Henderson. Robert, you need to see something. He sounded uncomfortable. Della posted on Facebook. It's extensive. I hung up and opened my laptop, found her profile. The post was long, emotional, carefully constructed. I read it twice. My father chose money over family. After dedicating 7 years to caring for our family home, he evicted me with 30 days' notice, sold the house my mother loved, and now refuses my calls. This is what elder cruelty looks like, except he's the elder being cruel. 3,400 views, 340 comments, half of them sympathetic. Poor girl, terrible father, how could he? The other half skeptical. There's two sides to every story. What did she do? Sounds like manipulation. I closed the laptop, went to work, didn't respond. Over the next 3 days, my phone rang repeatedly. Clients, business associates, people who'd seen the post and wanted my side. Each time I gave them the same short explanation. Jim Peterson, who'd contracted with Clark Construction for 15 years, called on Thursday. "Robert, I saw your daughter's post. That's some serious accusation. What's your side?" "She left out the part where she screamed at me to leave her wedding in front of 150 guests," I said calmly. "And the part where I was holding a $3 million check when she did it." Long pause. "She did what?" "Tore me apart publicly because Leroy thought it was funny. So yes, I evicted them from my house. Yes, I sold the property. And no, I don't regret either decision." "I don't blame you one bit, Robert. Not one bit." Same conversation, 5 times over 3 days. Each person who asked got the truth. Not posted publicly. That would be sinking to her level. But shared directly with anyone who mattered. The social media campaign was backfiring again, just like the first time. Della was learning that sympathy requires an audience who doesn't know the whole story. Once they did, the sympathy evaporated. A week later, my phone rang with a number I recognized but hadn't seen in years. Helen Johnson, Carol's closest friend, the woman who'd helped plan our wedding, who'd brought casseroles after Carol died. "Robert, it's Helen. I hope I'm not overstepping, but Della called me yesterday. She's very upset about your relationship. She asked me to talk to you." I sat down, took a breath. "What did she tell you?" "That you evicted her and sold the family home. That you won't speak to her. That she doesn't understand what she did wrong." Helen's voice was careful, gentle. "Robert, I know grief changes people, but this doesn't sound like you. Helen, let me tell you what happened at Della's wedding." I told her everything. The envelope, the public humiliation, Leroy's jokes, Della's screaming, the torn check. When I finished, the line was silent for a long moment. $3 million. $3 million. "And she, in front of everyone?" "She did." Another silence. Then Helen's voice changed, lost all its gentleness, became something cold and disappointed. "I need to call her back. Robert, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have assumed. Carol would be—" She couldn't finish the sentence. "I know," I said quietly. "I'll talk to her. She needs to understand what she's lost." Helen hung up. 20 minutes later, my phone buzzed with a text from Della. "What did you tell Mrs. Johnson? She won't stop yelling at me." I didn't respond. The 4th of July fell on a Friday that year. The city held celebrations at Zilker Park. Music, food trucks, families with children waiting for fireworks that evening. I normally avoided crowds, but something made me go. Maybe the desire to do something normal. Maybe the need to prove I could exist in public without shame. I parked near the main entrance and walked through the crowd. Found a spot near the stage where a local band was setting up. Bought a lemonade from a vendor. That's when I saw Leroy. 30 feet away, scanning the crowd. When his eyes found me, his face changed. Relief, hope, determination. He started walking toward me. I watched him approach. Let him get within 20 feet. Then I turned and walked directly to the security checkpoint near the stage entrance. "Excuse me," I said to one of the officers. "That man in the blue shirt is harassing me. I've asked him to leave me alone multiple times. He won't respect that." The officer followed my gaze. "You want us to remove him?" "Please." I watched from a distance as 2 security officers approached Leroy. Saw his face shift from confusion to anger to humiliation as they spoke to him. His voice carried across the lawn. Something about family, about rights, about this being insane. "Sir, that gentleman says you're harassing him. I need you to leave the event." "That's my father-in-law. We're family." "He says otherwise. You need to exit the park now, or we'll involve police." Families nearby were watching now. Children staring, parents pulling their kids closer, away from the disturbance. Leroy's face went red. "This is insane. We have a right—" Now, sir. He left, walked away through the crowd with everyone watching, security officers following to ensure he exited the park. I saw Della standing near the food trucks, one hand over her mouth, tears streaming down her face. She saw me watching, turned, and ran. I stayed for another hour, listened to the band, drank my lemonade, watched families enjoy their holiday. When the sun started setting, I went home. That night, sitting in my condo, I received one more text from Della. "You've destroyed us." I looked at it for a long time, then typed a response. "No, you destroyed yourselves. I just stopped helping you pretend otherwise." I pressed send and blocked both their numbers. The war was over. They'd lost, and I'd won by simply refusing to lose anymore. The morning after the 4th of July incident, I was making breakfast when my phone buzzed on the counter. I glanced at the screen. Della's name. A text message. "Dad, I surrender. We were wrong. Please, give me a chance to make this right. I'll do anything. Just talk to me." I read it 3 times. Noted the language. Surrender. Like we'd been at war. Which I supposed we had been. My thumb hovered over the reply button for maybe 15 seconds. Then I locked the phone and slid it across the counter, returning to my eggs. 6 days passed. I went to work consultations, still tying up loose ends at the company, even though I was planning to sell. 8 dinners alone. Slept well for the first time in months. On the 7th day, Stephen Wright called. "Robert, your daughter contacted me. She's requesting a mediated conversation with me present as a neutral party. I can facilitate if you're willing." "When?" A pause. "Whenever you're ready." "July 25th, your office, 2 o'clock. I took a breath. "She comes alone, or not at all?" "I'll let her know." The days leading up to that meeting passed quietly. I finalized paperwork for selling Clark Construction, a decision I'd been considering for years but had accelerated. Time to retire. Time to step away from everything that tied me to the life I'd been living. On July 25th, I arrived at Wright's office at exactly 2 o'clock. Della was already there, sitting in the conference room, tissues clutched in her hand. No Leroy. She'd followed that instruction at least. Wright sat at the head of the table with his legal pad, playing mediator. I took the chair across from Della and waited. She started crying immediately. "I know I hurt you. Leroy was in my ear constantly, saying you didn't fit the wedding aesthetic, that you'd embarrass us. I was weak. I'm not making excuses. You chose those words yourself, Della." I kept my voice level. "Not Leroy. You." "I know." Her mascara was smudging. "I was horrible. I've been horrible. And I know why you did everything. And the eviction, selling the house. All of it. You were right to do it. I just want a chance to prove I can be better. To show you I'm sorry." I looked at her for a long moment. 35 years of memories. Teaching her to ride a bike, helping with homework, walking her down the aisle at her first wedding that didn't end like this one. All of it leading to that moment in the Allen House ballroom. "Della, I raised you for 35 years. Fed you, clothed you, paid for your education. After your mother died, I gave you the house, asking nothing in return. All I wanted was basic respect. At your wedding, you showed me I'm nothing to you." "Dad, please. Now you're crying not because you hurt me. You're crying because you lost access to money." She flinched like I'd slapped her. "That's not, isn't it?" I leaned forward slightly. "If I were poor, would you be here? If I didn't own property, didn't have savings, didn't have anything to inherit, would you be sitting in this office begging for another chance?" The silence answered for her. I stood up. "I'm not excluding you from my life forever. But trust isn't rebuilt in one day, or one meeting. Live your life. If in years you truly change, maybe we'll talk." "Years?" Her voice cracked. "Dad, what can I do? Tell me what I can do to fix this." "That's the point, Della. You can't fix it by doing something for me. You fix it by becoming someone different. Someone who treats people with dignity. Someone your mother would have recognized." I walked to the door. "Right, thank you for your time." Behind me, I heard Della sobbing. Wright said something to her, low and comforting. I didn't stay to listen. A week later, I signed the papers selling Clark Construction. $4.2 million for 40 years of work. The buyers were a commercial firm out of Houston, good reputation, would take care of my employees. Tom Henderson got a generous consulting contract as part of the deal. Everyone landed on their feet. Except me. I landed somewhere better. Retirement. 9 days after that, my phone rang. Tom Henderson. Robert, congratulations on the sale. Clean exit, good price. You should be proud. Thanks, Tom. Couldn't have done it without you. Listen, I ran into someone who asked about you. Della. She seemed shocked to hear about the company sale. I assumed she knew. I smiled, looking out my condo window at the Austin skyline. She didn't. Oh. A pause. Well, she knows now. She looked pretty shaken. I imagine so. That evening, my phone rang twice with Della's number. I silenced both calls. Then a text message appeared. I understood. I'm sorry. 2 sentences. No begging, no demands, no manipulation. Just acknowledgement. I read it twice, then locked my phone and set it on the coffee table. Maybe I'd respond eventually. Maybe I wouldn't. But for now, the silence felt exactly right. Later that night, I opened my laptop and reviewed the foundation paperwork. The Carol Ann Clark Memorial Scholarship had already received its first applicant, a young woman studying early childhood education at the community college. The Housing Foundation was still in formation, but Wright assured me it would be operational by September. Everything was falling into place. Not the life I'd planned, but maybe the life I'd earned, after finally standing up for myself. I poured a drink and sat by the window, watching the city lights flicker below. Somewhere out there, Della and Leroy were living with their consequences, and I was living with mine, which surprisingly felt pretty good. The next morning, I booked a flight to Arizona. Sedona had been on Carol's bucket list, red rocks and hiking trails in that impossible blue sky. We'd circled resorts in travel magazines, planned to go for our 40th anniversary. Then she got sick, and the plans dissolved into hospital visits and difficult conversations, and eventually, silence. I'd never gone. Couldn't imagine it without her. But now, standing in my condo with a carry-on bag half packed, I thought maybe it was time. Not to forget her, but to honor what she'd wanted, to finally finish something we'd started. The flight left the next day. I packed light, hiking boots I hadn't worn in 5 years, a photo of Carol from our wedding day, a paperback novel someone had recommended. At the airport, the gate agent checked my boarding pass and smiled. Sedona. Beautiful this time of year. Business or pleasure? Something I should have done years ago. Better late than never. Exactly. The week in Sedona passed in a kind of peaceful blur. I hiked Cathedral Rock at sunrise, the desert painted orange and purple around me, ate lunch at small cafes with tourists and families, drove through Oak Creek Canyon with the windows down, red rocks towering on both sides, slept 10 hours each night in a silence broken only by coyotes howling in the distance. For the first time since the wedding, I thought about Carol without the accompanying weight of Della's betrayal. Just thought about my wife, the way she laughed, her terrible jokes, how she could make friends with anyone in 30 seconds. She would have loved it here. When I returned to Austin a week later, there was a letter waiting in my mailbox. Official letterhead, foundation logo at the top. I took it upstairs and read it on my balcony, coffee cooling beside me. Dear Mr. Clark, the Clark Eleanor Housing Initiative has been granted 501c3 status. Initial funding of $5.6 million enables 3 projects: senior housing in East Austin, veteran apartments in Round Rock, and accessible units in Pflugerville. Groundbreaking scheduled for September 15th. Your vision of affordable, dignified housing for elderly Texans is becoming reality. Sincerely, Frank Adams, Executive Director. I read it 3 times, then put it on my refrigerator with a magnet where I'd see it every morning. Something good was coming from all this pain. Carol would have liked that too. 2 days later, another letter arrived. This one in a cream envelope, my address written in careful script I recognized immediately. Della. I weighed the envelope in my hand before opening it. 4 pages, handwritten. I sat on my balcony and read. The letter talked about therapy, about family counseling with Leroy, about paying down debt $2,000 a month, about recognizing patterns she couldn't see before, about becoming someone I could be proud of again. Not now, maybe not soon, but someday. The last paragraph was the most important. I'm not asking for money or forgiveness. I just needed you to know I'm trying. I folded the letter carefully and placed it in my desk drawer. Didn't respond. Didn't need to. Maybe someday I would. Maybe not. But for the first time, I allowed the possibility that the door wouldn't be closed forever. Just not today. The next afternoon, I met Stephen Wright one final time. His office felt different now, not a battlefield, just a room where business got conducted. We reviewed everything. Eviction complete. Will finalized. House sold. Company sold. Foundation operational. Wright closed the last file folder and looked at me. All business concluded. The Foundation will send you quarterly reports, but you're no longer legally tied to any of these matters. How do you feel? I thought about it. Really thought about it. Free, he smiled. That's the best outcome I could hope for a client. We shook hands. I walked outside into August sunlight, stood on the sidewalk watching traffic flow past, then turned toward my favorite cafe 3 blocks away instead of heading straight home. The place was busy. Lunch rush. Tables full of people eating and talking and living their normal lives. I ordered at the counter. The usual, Mr. Clark? Black coffee? Actually, make it a cappuccino today. The barista raised her eyebrows. Feeling adventurous? I laughed. Actually laughed. Something like that. I took my drink to the terrace and sat watching people walk past. Couples holding hands. Parents with strollers. A guy arguing cheerfully on his phone. Normal life happening all around me, and for the first time in 8 years, I didn't feel separate from it. Didn't feel emptiness. Felt peace. My phone vibrated. Text message from an old partner. Robert, there's an interesting consulting project if you're interested. Housing development in San Marcos. Could use your expertise. I sipped my cappuccino and typed back, send me the details. Life was continuing, but now on my terms. No one screaming at me to leave. No one taking advantage of my silence. No one mistaking kindness for weakness. The afternoon sun warmed my face. Somewhere across town, Della and Leroy were paying their bills and going to therapy and figuring out how to live without expecting my money to save them. And I was here, drinking overpriced coffee on a terrace, thinking about consulting projects and foundation groundbreakings and maybe another trip to Sedona in the fall. Not the life I'd planned, not the family I'd hoped for, but mine. Completely, finally, mine. And that, I decided, was enough. If you liked this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share your impressions of this story in the comments. To listen to the next story, click on the box on the left. Thank you for watching.